My boyfriend hates my stepsister extremely. My stepsister was humiliated by others and died on his birthday, leaving behind only a diary filled with love and accusations. My boyfriend called her disgusting, but soon after, he framed my mother and got her imprisoned, and then he imprisoned and tortured me. He found people to humiliate me. His eyes were filled with crazy hatred. Ruoro just wanted to stay by my side. Why couldn't you tolerate her? When I woke up again, I went back to the day when he publicly humiliated my stepsister and then confessed his love to me. 1. Luo, I like you. Can you be my girlfriend? The man's confession with a bit of shyness caused a lot of teasing from the friends around. I came back to my senses and happened to meet Xianmian's expectant gaze, but before I could react, a sound of glass breaking came from not far away, accompanied by a girl's apology with a sobbing voice. Sorry, I'll clean it up right away. Xianmian's face changed instantly. He almost left me without thinking. He strode towards Song Ruoro, who was squatting on the ground picking up the glass, and then forcefully pulled her arm to make her stand up. His tone was almost gnashing his teeth, but there was a trace of imperceptible panic. Why the hell are you here? The always gentle and elegant Xianmian would only lose his composure and swear like this in front of Song Ruoro. Song Ruoro's body trembled in fear. I'm working here. She paused, then took out a box of medicine from her close pocket and carefully handed it to Xianmian. Brother, you have a bad stomach. I prepared the medicine for you in advance. Song Ruoro, aren't you being cheap? You're coming here on your own to get scolded. Xianmian raised his hand and slapped the medicine out of Song Ruoro's hand, his tone full of disgust. Get out of here. Don't embarrass yourself here. I don't know if it was because she had been squatting for too long and her legs were numb, but Song Ruoro fell to the ground because of Xianmian's action. Her palm landed on the glass shards, and it was bleeding profusely. She let out a soft cry of pain and then looked up at Xianmian with red eyes. This scene was very familiar. It was so familiar that I realized almost the next second, I was reborn, in my last life. Xianmian also showed such an extremely disgusted look towards Song Ruoro in front of me. He even told Song Ruoro to die countless times, until Song Ruoro really died on the way to give him a gift. She was lying in a dirty alley with her clothes in disarray. When sorting out the belongings left behind, Song Ruoro's mother gave Xianmian a diary with red eyes. The diary was filled with Song Ruoro's deeply hidden love for Xianmian, and accusations of all kinds of warnings and domineering behaviors that I carried out behind her back. So, Xianmian believed that I had killed Song Ruoro out of jealousy. He coldly called Song Ruoro disgusting and burned the diary in front of me, but soon after, he began to take crazy revenge on me. First, he framed my mother and got her imprisoned, then he imprisoned me and tortured me with all kinds of means. The day I died happened to be his birthday. It was also the anniversary of Song Ruoro's death. Xianmian found people to humiliate me, his eyes full of hatred. Ruoro just wanted to stay by my side. Why couldn't you tolerate her so much? But I didn't make it easy for Xianmian either. Before I died, I bit off one of his ears, but fortunately, I was reborn. I went back to the day when Xianmian publicly humiliated Song Ruoro and then confessed his love to me. Everything hadn't started yet. 2. Medicine. Where did you get the money to buy such expensive medicine? Could it be that you used the same means as your mother? Xianmian sneered. He had always spoken to Song Ruoro so harshly, so in my last life, I really thought that Xianmian truly hated his stepsister. Sure enough, Song Ruoro's face turned pale. She looked at Xianmian helplessly and in shock, and shouted with a sobbing voice, I'm not that cheap. But this time, I noticed that Xianmian's gaze subconsciously avoided, and there was a trace of heartache in his eyes, as if he was regretting it. I sneered. No one present stopped Xianmian, because everyone knew that Xianmian hated his stepmother who had become his father's wife after being the mistress. He also hated the burden that his stepmother brought into the Xie family, that is, Song Ruoro. But in Song Ruoro's diary in my last life, it was me who led all of this. It was me who excluded and bullied her with all my friends in the circle, making her gradually despair. This was also one of the reasons why Xianmian hated me. So I looked at Song Ruoro, who was crying softly, and walked towards her on my own initiative. I asked kindly, are you okay? I helped her up and then glared at Xianmian. Xianmian, you're going too far. Why don't you take Miss Song to put some medicine on her wound quickly? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. 3. Everyone knew that Xianmian and I were childhood sweethearts, and today, it was the day when Xianmian confessed his love to me in front of all our friends. It was also my birthday. He frowned subconsciously. Luo, don't be angry, I'll make her leave right away. Xiamian thought I was speaking ironically. After all, everyone thought that I really didn't like Song Ruoro always pestering and flattering Xiamian, but she couldn't be driven away, so Xiamian softened his tone and chuckled to coax me. Today is your birthday, I won't let anyone disturb you. As he was speaking, he was about to drag Song Ruoro out, but before I could speak, Song Ruoro's voice suddenly rang in my ear. System, what's going on? Why is the female lead suddenly being nice to me? I was stunned and subconsciously looked at Song Ruoro. She didn't open her mouth, probably because she was pulled painfully by Xiamian. She was lowering her head and sobbing softly, but the voice I heard was completely different from the weakness she showed. Forget it. She's just an insignificant supporting character. As long as I have that medicine, I will definitely win the male lead tonight. Song Ruoro's tone was full of confidence. Wait a minute. So I immediately stopped Xiamian, pretending not to see his body stiffening instantly. I smiled at Song Ruoro. Today is my birthday, can I invite you to my birthday party? Xiamian's face froze. Song Ruoro subconsciously looked at Xiamian's reaction. She rarely went against Xiamian's will. But Song Ruoro really wanted to succeed this time, so she quickly lowered her head and softly agreed, saying okay. I chuckled. The smile didn't reach my eyes. Rather than letting these two people do something where I didn't know, it would be better to keep them right under my nose. 4. I had booked these 2 floors of the hotel, perhaps because I didn't accept his confession immediately, or perhaps because Song Ruoro stayed. In the following time, Xiamian kept drinking. I didn't stop him and was happy to see it happen. Song Ruoro kept whispering beside Xiamian, advising him to drink less, but she was pushed away impatiently by Xiamian. But no one noticed that Xiamian always carefully avoided Song Ruoro's injured hand. Even when he noticed that Song Ruoro was about to bump into the waiter's cart, he quietly pulled her closer to him, and then he impatiently shook her off. No one noticed the strange atmosphere between the two of them. I smiled and secretly asked someone to serve more high-concentration alcohol. It was time to cut the cake. I distributed the cake to my friends, including Song Ruoro, but when Xiamian noticed the cake that Song Ruoro got, his face froze, and he reached out and knocked the cake over without thinking. The commotion was so loud that everyone subconsciously looked over. Xiamian subconsciously explained, she's allergic to almonds. As if realizing that his behavior was too extreme, his eyes darkened, and he calmed down. Then he sneered, she's allergic to almonds. I'm afraid that if she eats it and dies, the old man will come to me for trouble. His expression was as disgusted as ever, but I saw Song Ruoro's eyes light up, with a bit of complacency that she was determined to succeed. 5. Xiamian was drunk. He leaned on me, his tone coquettish and with a trace of small complaint. Luo, why didn't you agree to me? But before I could answer, Xiamian started self-reflecting. It must be because I'm not good enough, so Luo is hesitating. He sounded a bit aggrieved. Xiamian and I were childhood sweethearts. The always proud young master of the Xie family would only lower his head for me, and because of my words I like it, he took great pains to practice his cooking skills. He once told everyone with bright eyes that I was the girl he most wanted to marry, so everyone thought that we were the most suitable couple. I also thought so in my last life. So even though Song Ruoro often appeared beside Xiamian and me, I didn't take her seriously at all, until later Song Ruoro died. I also clearly realized that for Xiamian, wanting to marry didn't mean loving the most, and the two could even coexist. I turned my head and looked at Xiamian, who was leaning on my shoulder. He was completely different from the gloomy and vicious Xiamian in my memory who wanted me to die, so I smiled and said, how could that be? You're very good. It's just that I have some things to deal with. My tone was casual. But Xiamian was coaxed into being happy and said that I was the best in a clingy way, but he was so drunk that he didn't even know when the person beside him had changed. I have something urgent to deal with. I can only trouble Miss Song to send me on to the room. I noticed that Song Ruoro was following me intentionally or unintentionally, so I stopped her. I handed her the room card and spoke with an apologetic tone. Song Ruoro had originally been secretly jealous and staring at the intimate actions between me and Xiamian. When she heard these words, she was stunned for a moment, then quickly lowered her head and held back the smile at the corner of her mouth. It doesn't matter, Miss Shin can go and do your own thing, I'll just send my brother there. I could still clearly hear her conversation with that so-called system. Her tone was disdainful. This woman is so stupid. She sent the opportunity to me herself. then don't blame me. Song Rororo helped Xiamian leave, and I just stood there and suddenly laughed. Go ahead, after all, I also gave a big gift. 6. I went back to the room and immediately took a shower, and then threw away the clothes that had been touched by Xiamian. The ambiguous sounds in the video didn't stop. The medicine given by that so-called system was indeed somewhat effective. At first, Xiamian mistook Song Rororo for me, but he quickly sobered up. He subconsciously pinched Song Rororo's neck with disgust and shock, but when she shed weak and pitiful tears, he hesitated and let go of his hand, and let out a muffled groan with a flushed face. This gave Song Rororo the opportunity to continue, so the scolding and crying gradually turned into ambiguous gasps. I glanced at it and then turned my eyes away in disgust. Later, as soon as I got up, the door was banged. The sound was urgent, as if it was accidentally bumped into. I opened the door to take a look and only saw a figure leaving in a hurry. It was as if there was some fierce beast chasing behind. I couldn't see it after it turned the corner, but that familiar figure made me widen my eyes suddenly. Before I died in my last life, I also saw someone desperately pushing everyone aside and running towards me, but I was in so much pain that I didn't see clearly who it was. At my feet lay a beautifully wrapped birthday gift quietly, without thinking. I chased after it and took out my phone, trying to control the trembling in my voice. Help me stop someone. 7. The person was stopped at the gate by the bodyguards. When I arrived, he had his back to me and was fighting with the bodyguards who were stopping him. His movements were fierce, and he hardly considered whether he would get injured. Stop. The moment that person heard my voice, he stiffened suddenly. Like a fierce dog that immediately stopped all its actions after receiving the owner's command, he waited obediently and nervously. Am I going to eat you? Why are you running so fast? I walked forward quickly, angry and anxious, but the words I wanted to use to educate him got stuck suddenly when I saw the familiar attire. I widened my eyes. Xie Shishu, the illegitimate son of the Xie family. After being recognized by me, Xie Shishu almost instinctively lowered the brim of his hat. He turned around in a panic and confusion, and his voice faintly carried a choking plea. Why you don't look at me, please? So I stopped all my movements. Why can't I look at you? As soon as the words were spoken, Xie Shishu's overly thin back stiffened suddenly. After a long while, I heard this person speak extremely difficultly. Each word seemed to be squeezed out desperately from his chest, and it carried a gentle despair. Ugly. I'll scare you. This time, it was my turn to be stunned. 8. I wasn't familiar with Xie Shishu, probably because he was an illegitimate son. Xie Shishu was so dull that he could be called gloomy. He had a completely different personality from the popular Xiamian. The figure in my memory who desperately tried to save me gradually faded away, and I suddenly wasn't sure if Xie Shishu was that person. After all, I had only spoken a few words to Xie Shishu, and our relationship wasn't deep, so I pursed my lips and thanked him. Thank you for the birthday gift. Xie Shishu panicked, and even his back showed a bit of uneasiness. He lowered his head and said very softly, and no need to thank me. I noticed that the earlobe hidden under the black broken hair instantly turned red as if it was about to bleed, but in my last life, I heard that Xie Shishu was ruthless in his methods, and several times he almost pulled Xiamian down from the position of the heir of the Xie family. But this person always seemed to lack a bit of luck. However, at that time, I hadn't had any contact with Xie Shishu for a long time, so I stopped Xie Shishu who was about to leave. Xie Shishu, let's cooperate. I have to make Xiamian's life worse than death. But the Xie family is a huge entity. Businessmen pursue profit. The Xie family is that profit. I thought that Xie Shishu was capable and could disguise himself in the Xie family for so long. He probably wouldn't agree to my invitation immediately, but I didn't guess the reason why he refused me. The thin and weak teenager still didn't turn around, but the hand hanging by his side clenched and then loosened. Finally, he said in a small and aggrieved voice, but I don't have any money left. 9. I don't have any money left. I had a dream. In the dream, the voice of a child overlapped with that of Xie Shishu, but that child was not ugly at all. On the contrary, he was very good-looking. His amber eyes looked at me timidly. He said in a small and uneasy voice, I don't have any money left. Can I still play with you? Of course, I heard my young self answer like this. Then I playfully pinched the child's face. After pinching it red, I seriously emphasized, but we're not just playing, we're collaborating on something big. In the end, I got myself into the hands of the kidnappers. The little boy, who was as thin and weak as a beautiful chick, desperately rubbed through the ropes that bound my hands and feet and told me to run away quickly. I pulled him to run together, but he couldn't escape. The dream ended abruptly at this point, because the door of my room was knocked heavily, accompanied by Siamion's hoarse voice, "Luo, are you in there?" 10. Siamion had obviously just gotten out of Song Ruorwo's bed and then came to find me in a hurry. He asked me indirectly. Only after finding that there was nothing abnormal did he heave a sigh of relief. "I still have some things to go back and deal with first." Siamion spoke with an apologetic tone. He paused and then looked at me very affectionately. "But Luo, I still hope you can seriously consider the matter between us." I held back my nausea and lazily replied, "Okay." After Siamion left, I didn't rush back but waited quietly for a while. Not long after, the door of the room next to his opened. It was Siamion's friend, Xue Minghui. When he saw me, Xue Minghui couldn't help clicking his tongue several times. His tone was ambiguous. "You two really had a wild time last night. I couldn't even sleep peacefully next door." Of course, he couldn't sleep peacefully. After all, I specifically arranged a room with the worst sound insulation for those two people. I sneered and frowned, pretending not to understand. "What do you mean by having a wild time?" "I was very tired yesterday and went straight to bed as soon as I got back to my room." Xue Minghui realized something was wrong belatedly, and his face froze. Before he could speak, I asked again, "By the way, do you know where Miss Song has gone?" "Song Ruorwo, yeah." I showed an apologetic expression. "I was supposed to send Mion back to rest last night, but something came up at the company, so I asked Miss Song to take care of Mion." Later, after I finished dealing with the matter, I realized that I forgot to give Miss Song her room card. I don't know where she stayed so late last night. At this moment, Xue Minghui's face darkened so much that it seemed as if ink could drip from it. "I only found out in my last life, after Song Ruorwo's death, that Xue Minghui liked Song Ruorwo. He hid it very well, just so that when Song Ruorwo was in deep trouble, he could appear in front of her as a savior." So Xue Minghui had never stopped Siamion from bullying Song Ruorwo. He even fanned the flames in front of Siamion intentionally or unintentionally, but before he could make his appearance, Song Ruorwo died. Later, under Siamion's deliberate guidance, Xue Minghui also believed that I had schemed to kill Song Ruorwo, so these two people joined hands to carry out the so-called revenge on me. But now, the allies from my last life were about to turn against each other. Xue Minghui left in a hurry with a gloomy face even before he could make excuses for his good brother. I curved my eyes and smiled, but when I turned around, I was suddenly stunned. Xie Shishu, 11, he was still wearing black clothes, black pants, a black duckbill cap, and even a black mask, hiding in the corner. I didn't know how long he had been there. I suddenly remembered that Xie Shishu in my impression always seemed so unremarkable. "When did you come?" I walked towards him with a casual tone. "Last night." After Xie Shishu left in a hurry with the words, "But I don't have any money left," he didn't give a definite answer. When he saw me walking over, this person instinctively wanted to step back, but he was so scared by my words, "If you dare to take a step back, I'll strip off your clothes," that he stopped in his tracks abruptly. The earlobe exposed outside was so red that it seemed as if it was about to bleed. Xie Shishu stammered, "He's not a good person. Don't agree to him. I saw Song Ruorwo enter his room last night and she didn't come out all night." It was obvious who he was. When he saw me raise my eyebrows, Xie Shishu was worried that I wouldn't believe him and said anxiously, "Really? I saw it with my own eyes." "You saw it with your own eyes?" I was stunned. "You've been waiting here all night." I realized belatedly that Xie Shishu's all-black attire wasn't because he liked to dress like this. It was because he simply didn't have time to change his clothes. My expression became complicated. Just as I was about to say something, I saw Xie Shishu take a small half-step back. He lowered his head and said very softly, "Why you don't come any closer?" As if afraid that I would think too much. This person raised his head again and explained to me in a hurry, "I don't dislike you, I just haven't had time to change my clothes. I'll smell bad." The last half of the sentence was said very softly and embarrassingly. He was clearly half a head taller than me, but at this moment, he was as flustered and helpless as a child who had made a mistake. I suddenly thought of the dream I had. I thought of the little boy in the dream who was overly delicate in appearance but very shy, so a sentence blurted out, "Xie Shishu, can I see your face?" Xie Shishu had always been wearing a mask, and in my last life, he went abroad early. When he returned to the country, I had already been imprisoned in the dark basement by Siamion. It seemed that I had never known what Xie Shishu looked like. But as soon as the words were spoken, Xie Shishu's body stiffened suddenly. Even the redness on his earlobe faded away instantly, the aura around him became as silent as a stagnant pond. I remembered the conversation last night and guessed that he should have some unspeakable difficulties. Immediately, I felt a bit apologetic. Sorry. I was being rude. It's okay, Xie Shishu gently shook his head. He slowly and stiffly raised his hand, as if he was going to take off his mask. It might be a bit ugly, I hope it won't scare you, Xie Shishu. I stopped him and smiled with curved eyebrows. Thank you for the reminder. 12. I stopped Xie Shishu from taking off his mask, but I kept it in mind and asked someone to investigate what had happened to Xie Shishu. I don't know why. After meeting Xie Shishu for the second time, the thought in my heart that Xie Shishu is the person from my last life became stronger and stronger. Xie Shishu's information was overly simple, but I saw a photo of Xie Shishu when he was a child. He looked exactly the same as the boy in my dream, but I don't know why. I had no impression of this face at all, so I thought of the kidnapping in my dream again. You were kidnapped when you were a child, and later Xian Mian brought you back. Xian Mian, I was stunned and didn't react for a moment. Why don't I have any impression of this? You had a serious illness after you came back. At that time, you were still young, so it's normal not to remember these things. My mother rolled her eyes at me while applying a facial mask. Otherwise, why do you think our family is so close to the Xie family? It's not because their son saved your life. I thought that the son of the Xie family might really have saved my life. But that person definitely wouldn't be Xian Mian. I heard that you invited Xian Mian's little sister on your birthday. My mother didn't look at me, so I realized that my little tricks hadn't been hidden from her. Sure enough, the next second my mother clicked her tongue. You're still young. In the end, it's your mother who has to clean up your mess. I touched my nose guiltily and didn't dare to say anything. She didn't say much either. And she didn't ask me what had happened between Xian Mian and me. She just said casually before leaving, I think a piece of land in the Shui family's hands is quite good. It's a pity that the kid from the Xie family took it first by relying on some favor. However, this thing called favor will be exhausted sooner or later, and it's not worth much. I understood. I smiled at my mother and said, I see. 13. Xian Mian probably had dealt with Song Ruoro's matter. He began to be more and more attentive to me and occasionally showed a bit of eagerness. Song Ruoro didn't appear in front of me again. But unexpectedly, a few days later, she got together with Shui Minghui. Thanks to this strange mind-reading ability, I pieced together the truth that I hadn't known in my last life. Song Ruoro was a so-called task performer. The purpose of her coming to this world was to collect the love value of the male lead. She could leave once the task was completed. Unfortunately, the last time she was too eager for quick success and gave Xian Mian the medicine. Not only did it not increase Xian Mian's love value for her, but it also almost made Xian Mian and Shui Minghui turn against each other. A woman who wasn't loved enough at present was naturally not as important as a cooperation worth hundreds of millions. In order to appease Shui Minghui and also to stimulate Xian Mian, Song Ruoro agreed to Shui Minghui's pursuit. But Shui Minghui was originally a suspicious person, coupled with the fact that he got Song Ruoro so easily now. He naturally wouldn't treat Song Ruoro very well. Song Ruoro called Xian Mian many times in private, but Xian Mian hung up on her in front of me, like mother, like daughter. Xian Mian sneered, but there was a fierce look in his eyes. I'm afraid she's long wanted to use me as a stepping stone. It's really hard for this woman to have pretended in front of me for so long. When saying these words, Xian Mian had been secretly observing my expression. But I knew that this was just an illusion that Xian Mian wanted me to see. Not long after Shui Minghui and Song Ruoro officially announced their relationship, I received an anonymous email. In the video, Song Ruoro and Xian Mian were pulling and tugging at each other. Judging from the surrounding environment, it should be the time when Song Ruoro attended the charity dinner as Shui Minghui's female companion. The person filming was at a distance, and it was impossible to hear clearly what Song Ruoro and Xian Mian were saying in the video. That person probably also realized this, so he used a voice changer to dub it for me in a serious manner. It was somewhat comical. Xian Mian pinched Song Ruoro's neck. The person dubbed, "Is it fun to use me as a stepping stone? Song Ruoro, aren't you really afraid that I'll play with you until you die?" In fact, Xian Mian had said a lot, but I guessed it wasn't anything good. So the person who dubbed just vaguely skipped over it. Song Ruoro didn't resist either. She just tilted her head slightly and looked at Xian Mian stubbornly with her red eyes. Xian Mian fell for this. When I was imprisoned in my last life, Xiamian recalled this delicate yet strong appearance of Song Ruoruo in front of me countless times. He called me a poisonous woman and said that my love for him made him feel disgusted. But from beginning to end, it was Xiamian who had been pursuing me. Sure enough, in the video, Xiamian released his hand hesitantly, then he kissed her as if to vent his emotions, biting Song Ruoruo's lips with red eyes. Song Ruoruo tilted her head back to bear it, and a tear that was just right rolled down her cheek. Then, this kiss that was originally just for venting gradually changed its taste. Xiamian's hand reached into Song Ruoruo's dress. This probably scared the person filming. A slightly red hand flashed quickly in the shaking camera. But it soon disappeared from view, so I couldn't help but sigh. It turned out that when some people were shy, their whole bodies could turn red. The camera focused on Xiamian and Song Ruoruo again. Both of them still had some rationality left. Song Ruoruo finally sobbed and explained that she had done this to ensure the cooperation between the Xie family and the Shui family could proceed. This explanation stunned Xiamian, especially when Song Ruoruo revealed the red marks on her thighs. Xiamian completely lost control of his furious emotions. He said, "Do you think I'll believe you?" But under Song Ruoruo's intentional or unintentional seduction, he completely fell apart. It was not until someone came that the two of them reluctantly separated. Then they left one after another, pretending that nothing had happened. It was at that charity dinner that Xiamian bought an expensive pink diamond. When donating to the charity home, Xiamian also said affectionately to the camera, "The girl I like has the kindest heart, and I also hope she will like the gift I gave her." Everyone tacitly assumed that Xiamian was talking about me. Even though I wasn't present, many of my acquaintances sent their blessings in advance. And now, Xiamian was holding that pink diamond and confessing his love to me. This time, he didn't ask his friends to witness it, saying that he didn't want to be disturbed by other irrelevant people, so I lowered my eyes and looked at it for a while, then curved my lips. "Okay, 14, Xiamian was overjoyed. Without saying a word, he wanted to contact the two families to have a meal together. He hugged me and sighed, "I can finally enter your house legitimately, Luo. Don't worry, I will definitely treat you very well. When is Aunt Shen free?" I could hear the eagerness in Xiamian's tone, and of course, I knew why he had such a reaction. First, he was afraid that his affair with Song Ruoruo would be exposed, so as to avoid any potential problems. Second, he wanted to take this opportunity to make my mother agree to give up a portion of the profit. The Xie family and the Shen family had a cooperative project recently. Everything went smoothly in the early stage, but there were some problems with the profit sharing. My mother had been stubborn and didn't give in. "Okay." I held back my discomfort all over my body and replied casually, "You can arrange it. If you can make my mother give in on this matter, you win." I sneered in my heart, but Xiamian mistakenly thought that I would be on his side and was immediately overjoyed. While he went to the kitchen, I posted a status on my social media, "Thank you, my dear, for the gift, I like it very much." The attached picture was the pink diamond that Xiamian had bought. I knew that Song Ruoruo had been paying attention to all my updates. Sure enough, she was the first to send her blessings, and then a long string of "wish you two a long and happy relationship" followed, until an account with a black profile picture liked my status and then quickly unliked it. I couldn't help laughing. It was Xie Shishu. He was used to liking all my social media updates but never left any comments, so I found his WeChat ID and sent him a message, "On such a happy day, shouldn't you buy me a bouquet of flowers to celebrate?" I saw the chat box continuously showing typing but didn't receive a reply for a long time. I could probably guess how torn he was. I smiled and put down my phone. Just then, Xiamian came out of the kitchen, looking a bit anxious, but when he saw me, he furrowed his brows and said apologetically, Luo, something has come up at the company. I might not be able to stay with you any longer. I have to go back and deal with it first." I showed my understanding considerately, so Xiamian left in a hurry. Not long after, my social media feed refreshed. The latest post was from Song Ruoruo. "I have a fever, feeling so uncomfortable, but those who love you will come to your side no matter how far away they are." Red heart. The attached pictures were a big heart emoji and a censored screenshot of a shared location. Soon, someone asked her what was wrong in the comments. I sneered, took a screenshot without hesitation, and added the video of Song Ruoruo and Xiamian's affair on my birthday. I was about to have someone send them all to Shui Minghui, who was on a business trip abroad, but I hesitated just before sending them. Just then, a new WeChat message popped up. "Should I send it to your home?" But I seem to not know where you live. I could feel his caution and grievance even through the screen. 15. Xiaxishu arrived later than I expected. I thought he couldn't find the way. But I was stunned the moment I opened the door. He was holding a huge money tree, with his face hidden behind the leaves. He explained carefully, "You said before that you liked money trees better." I did say that. I said it casually when a boy in high school confessed his love to me with a bouquet of flowers, but who would be so silly as to give a girl a money tree? I was amused. "Didn't I ask you to bring flowers? Actually, money trees can also bloom." Xiaxishu's voice got softer and softer, sounding a bit guilty. "But I remember money trees rarely bloom." I laughed, teasing him on purpose. "I can't take care of such a big money tree." "I can take care of it for you," Xiaxishu replied instinctively, but then he froze as soon as the words came out. He quickly explained, "No, I mean, yeah, I know you didn't mean to use taking care of the money tree as an excuse to come to my house." I stepped aside to let him in, but Xiaxishu just stood at the door, not moving. "What's wrong?" Xiamian didn't say anything. His eyes slowly landed on a pair of men's slippers at the door. After a long while, he said haltingly, "Xiamian isn't suitable for you." I then realized that he must have mistaken these slippers as ones I prepared for Xiamian. In fact, I hated everything that Xiamian had touched. I had already found a new tenant for the apartment Xiamian had been to, but I didn't explain further. Instead, I tilted my head and asked him, "Then what's your identity to tell me something like this?" Xiaxishu opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. I waited patiently. Unexpectedly, after a long silence, Xiaxishu put down the money tree, rubbed his hands until they turned red, and then carefully tugged at my sleeve. The tall boy, over 1.8 meters, stood in front of me with his head lowered, exuding a sense of obedience. He said, "I can get plastic surgery. I'm sure I'll be more handsome than Xiamian after that. And I'm more obedient than him, so, can you stop liking him?" The last sentence was said very softly. It left me stunned and speechless. After a long while, I finally found my voice. "Xiaxishu, take off your mask." 16. I was prepared for the possibility that Xiaxishu might have grown less good looking as he got older, but not only did he not, his features had become even more delicate. The only flaw, if there was one, was the scar that extended from under his left eye to the end of his eyebrow. That scar also appeared in my dream. It was from when Xiaxishu was slashed by a thug's knife while protecting me to escape, a little deeper, and his left eye would have been blinded. Seeing me staring at his left eye, Xiaxishu instinctively turned his head, revealing his perfectly delicate right half of the face. He said softly, "The scar can be removed." "Xiaxishu," I called him. "Who said you're ugly?" Xiaxishu was taken aback and replied obediently, "A lot of people." "Who started it?" "Xiamian." Just as I expected, Xiamian had always hated Xiaxishu, but he couldn't get rid of him, because Xiaxishu's mother was a mentally ill person. She committed suicide after sending Xiaxishu to the Xia family, and this incident caused quite a stir at that time, so Xiamian could only suppress Xiaxishu in various ways. He called Xiaxishu ugly, he called Xiaxishu a good-for-nothing. He said Xiaxishu was just like his mother, a lunatic. My chest felt stuffy, and anger burned inside me. But I remained calm on the surface. "He said I'm so ugly that I'd scare you, so he told me not to show up in front of you," Xiaxishu added, carefully observing my expression. Xiamian indeed wouldn't want Xiaxishu around because he needed to fabricate the story of saving my life. I thought expressionlessly, but Xiaxishu mistook my silence for disbelief. The light in his amber eyes dimmed instantly. He asked me sadly, "Can I put my mask back on now?" "Wait a minute." Xiaxishu nodded. He seemed used to being quiet and compliant. It was hard for me to connect the person in front of me with the Xiaxishu who would later be able to compete with Xiamian, until I asked him to raise his head and then smiled and asked, "Have you ever tried drawing on your face?" Xiaxishu's eyes widened suddenly, then I watched as the redness in his eyes gradually spread, so I glanced at his hands resting on his knees and said deliberately, "Remember not to let your hands show in the videos next time." Xiaxishu stiffened. "Don't move." "Okay," Xiaxishu replied, sounding wronged. I drew a wisteria on the scar under Xiaxishu's eye. He hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time. This time, under my insistence, he looked at himself carefully in the mirror. After a while, he looked up at me. "I'm more handsome than Xiamian." His tone was confident. With a hint of excitement, I nodded. "You've always been more handsome than Xiamian." The redness that had just faded away reappeared on Xiaxishu's face. He quickly turned his head and changed the subject. Do you still need those videos? I have other ones. I asked Xie Shishu if he wanted to cooperate. I wanted Xie Mian and Song Ruoruo to be disgraced. But the cooperation between the Shin family and the Xie family couldn't be affected. From the beginning to the end, what I wanted was not just revenge. Xie Shishu understood and was very quick-witted. That's enough, I smiled. The videos I had were already enough to make Xue Minghui, that madman, turn against Xie Mian. 17. I found someone to teach Xie Shishu. He was much smarter than I expected. Most of the time, he could understand things with just a little explanation. Even so, I caught him studying all night several times. When caught, he would admit his mistake obediently but never change his ways. I asked Xie Shishu why he was pushing himself so hard. Xie Shishu stared at me for a long time, then stammered and changed the subject. He was hiding something from me. This made me a bit unhappy, but the feeling didn't last long. After all, this time, I only believed in myself. Xie Mian was so entangled with Song Ruoruo that he had no time to arrange a meeting between the two families. Song Ruoruo was extremely jealous and possessive. Now, because of the existence of Xue Minghui, a ticking time bomb, she was eager to complete her mission as soon as possible, and every time I met with Xie Mian, I would post on social media to show off. I knew Song Ruoruo was watching, and every time she saw it, she would find ways to call Xie Mian back to her side. This atmosphere of infidelity had Xie Mian hooked, especially when my unreasonableness made Song Ruoruo seem even more gentle and considerate. With my push, Xie Mian and Song Ruoruo's relationship developed rapidly. Xie Mian wanted it all, but in this world, there's no such thing as having everything your way. The project cooperation finally ended with my mother getting an additional 10% of the profit. I heard that after returning home, Xie Mian's father scolded him severely. Thinking that he had failed to do a good job in dealing with our side, Xie Mian threw a huge tantrum that day. Although he was nominally the heir of the Xie family, he was controlled by his father in every way and had long harbored resentment. In the last life, under the pretext of revenge, Xie Mian and Xue Minghui seized my family's business. After that, he quickly accumulated enough capital to start his own business. I knew about his ambition, so I softened my attitude for once. Comforted Xie Mian, and pretended to casually mention my intention to start a business. Sure enough, Xie Mian's eyes lit up. He coaxed me to start a business with him, saying that he didn't want to rely on his family. Luo, you know my father has always been very controlling. Xie Mian frowned. If he finds out about my plans, he'll do everything to stop me. But I really want to prove myself. Luo, you'll help me, right? He looked at me expectantly, so I smiled. Of course, after all, you're my boyfriend. It was worth it to use a little money to make Xie Mian fall into eternal ruin. Xie Mian was overjoyed and wanted to stay with me that night, but I refused him with an excuse. Xie Mian wasn't angry. He left after telling me to rest well. I knew he was going to see Song Ruoruo. Xie Mian had been trained as the heir since childhood and was strictly disciplined. Song Ruoruo had opened the door to a new world for him, according to the information sent by the private detective. The two of them had recently become obsessed with various role-playing games. Xie Mian used this way to vent his emotions and was deeply addicted. This was completely different from the last life. In the last life, Xie Mian didn't have a relationship with Song Ruoruo, and without the provocation from Xue Minghui, he focused all his efforts on self-improvement. But now, with his ally turned enemy and his abilities not matching his ambitions, I was eagerly looking forward to the day when everything would come to a head. After all, the Xie family didn't have only Xie Mian as a son. 18. Xue Minghui returned to the country. The first thing he did after coming back was to find me. He was straightforward. Do you know what your boyfriend and my girlfriend have been up to? Xue Minghui didn't suspect me. Xie Shishu was skilled, and Xue Minghui couldn't trace the sender of the emails. When I saw those videos, I was so angry that I trembled all over and wanted to confront Xie Mian immediately, but Xue Minghui stopped me. He hypocritically suggested that we join forces. What do you want to do? Just wait. Xue Minghui sneered viciously. I won't let them off easily. After a long silence, I said fiercely with red eyes, I heard Xie Mian wants that piece of land in the west of the city owned by the Xue family. The Shin family can cover the Xue family's losses and offer a higher price. That piece of land was a test given to Xie Mian by his father. Although the contract hadn't been signed yet, Xie Mian was determined to get it and had already started investing in construction. Now, if the Xue family went back on their word, his losses would be huge. Shui Minghui's eyes lit up immediately. Deal. He thought I was so angry that I was foolish enough to take on that mess, but he didn't know that soon the land would be taken over by the government, bringing immeasurable benefits. I watched Shui Minghui's departing back, put away the anger on my face, and smiled instead. Shui Minghui underestimated how crazy Xia Mian could be. When two rabid dogs fight, I hope Song Ruoruo can still bear it. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Xia Shishu. I've finished today's study tasks. Can I come to your place to check on the money tree? After a while, he tentatively sent a cat peeking out emoji, thinking of the money tree at home, which was now associated with the hope of blooming. I thought Xia Shishu had found a good excuse, but I didn't really mind. As soon as I gave my consent, Xia Shishu replied almost instantly, I'll be there right away. What would you like to eat today? I can buy groceries on the way. Xia Shishu was much better at cooking than Xia Mian, and his dishes suited my taste more. But this wasn't something he should be doing. I lowered my eyes, rubbing my phone, and refused him. I've already eaten. I happen to have something to discuss with you tonight and check your recent study progress by the way. This time, Xia Shishu took a while to reply. Okay. Then came a cat-looking, dejected emoji. I didn't reply further. While Xia Mian and Song Ruoruo were immersed in their various dramatic scenarios, I followed my mother's lead, intensified my study of company operations, attended various business meetings, and expanded my network. I once thought that Ms. Shen could always protect me. Until in the last life, she was framed for financial crimes by Xia Mian and imprisoned. I was powerless to support the Shen family, and in the end, all her years of hard work were swallowed up by Xia Mian and Shui Minghui. My mother, who loved beauty so much, tried every means to save me until the day she died, but I could do nothing. But this time, everything was different. 19. Shui Minghui delivered his gift at the birthday celebration of the Xia family's patriarch. The Xia family had originally planned to announce the engagement between the Xia and Shen families that day. Song Ruoruo didn't show up, but no one paid much attention, until Xia Mian's phone suddenly rang. When he saw the caller ID, his face froze. He instinctively looked up and then tried to hang up the phone in a hurry, but I stopped him. Is it Ruoruo? I asked, pretending to be concerned. She seems to be in a hurry. You'd better answer it. What if something's wrong? What could happen to her? She's just a troublemaker, Xia Mian said casually, not noticing the affection in his tone at all. But the people present were all shrewd. Xia Mian's father's expression changed, but he didn't say anything. I smiled, and when Xia Mian was about to hang up, I snatched the phone from him and answered the call. You should answer it. What if there's really an emergency? Mian, save me. Before she could finish, Song Ruoruo's scream with a sobbing voice rang out. Shui Minghui is trying to rape me. As soon as these words came out, Xia Mian's face changed drastically. He instinctively wanted to run out, but was stopped by his father. Dad, Xia Mian's voice was filled with unhidden urgency. Ruoruo is in danger. Xia Mian's father forced a smile at my mother and me, then scolded in a low voice. What danger could she be in? She and Xiao Shui are boyfriend and girlfriend. They're not, Xia Mian instinctively retorted, but suddenly stopped when he noticed me. Then his eyes lit up. Luo. You agree with me going, right? I had caught Xia Mian several times when Song Ruoruo used various excuses to get him to go and accompany her. At first, Xia Mian would nervously explain to me, but after I magnanimously showed my understanding several times, he became more and more blatant. He even thought it was only natural. I suppressed the smile in my eyes, frowned, and shook my head. Then I kindly advised him. Uncle Xia is right. Shui Minghui and she are in a relationship. How could he do something to hurt her? Maybe she's saying this on purpose. I bit my lip and didn't continue, but the meaning was clear. Xia Mian's face instantly darkened. He looked at me with disappointment in his eyes, and hurtful words blurted out without thinking. Shen Luo, I never thought you'd become so vicious. Xia Mian's father slapped him, stopping him angrily. The sudden pain brought Xia Mian back to his senses, but the words had already been said. He gave me a complex look, turned around, and was about to leave, only to be stopped by his father's men. Let him go. When the two sides were at a stalemate, the voice of the old master of the Xia family sounded. He was helped out by Xia Shishu, and I exchanged a quick glance and then quickly looked away. The old master of the Xia family scanned Xia Mian with eagle-like eyes. But Xia Mian, you should know what the consequences will be if you step out of this door today. You're not the only son in the Xia family. These words carried a warning, but Xia Mian didn't care. He pushed past the security guards without looking back and ran out. 20. The old master of the Xie family was extremely angry, but the best was yet to come. In the middle of the banquet, the screen in the hall suddenly started playing a live video. The environment in the video was dim, but there were ambiguous gasps and offensive dialogues. Slut, are you so happy being my dog? Where did Xue Minghui touch you? Here, or here? I didn't let him touch me. Brother, won't Shenluo mind if you come here? After all, you're going to announce your engagement later. Don't mention her. That woman won't even let me kiss her. I don't know what she's pretending to be so high and mighty about. If it weren't for her surname being Shen, I wouldn't even bother with that vicious woman. Everyone heard it clearly. Xie Shishu's face turned ice, cold almost instantly. His gaze on the video was as if he wished he could rush over and kill Xie Mian, but I stopped him silently. The old master of the Xie family had a stroke on the spot. The scene was in chaos. In the end, Xie Shishu called the family doctor, made a decisive decision to turn off the video, block the news, and deal with the media reporters at the banquet in a timely manner. He also had people forcefully bring Xie Mian and Song Ruoro back, but this video wasn't only played at the banquet. It spread across the entire internet. Xue Minghui had gone all out. It was considered a response to the hints I gave when sending those videos. I lowered my head and took a sip of wine without saying a word. My mother demanded an explanation from the Xie family with a cold face. Helpless, Xie Mian's father could only keep apologizing. He immediately handed over 3 projects to the Shen family and agreed to many conditions, barely calming my mother down. The anger on my mother's face hadn't completely disappeared, but she beamed as soon as she got in the car. How did you know Xie Mian would definitely go to that woman? She guessed that I had secretly orchestrated all these things. I let out an ah and chuckled. Because Song Ruoro is pregnant. 21. I had someone leak the news of Song Ruoro's pregnancy to Xie Mian. She originally wanted to keep it from Xie Mian and have an abortion. Because Song Ruoro was worried that the existence of the child would affect her leaving, but Xie Mian found out, and he was extremely eager for the child, so Song Ruoro had to put aside those thoughts. But everything was just beginning. With such a huge scandal, the Xie family became the butt of many people's jokes. The old master of the Xie family was hospitalized and fell into a coma. When Xie Mian's father was overwhelmed with work, he received the bad news that the Xue family had terminated all cooperation with the Xie family, because Xie Mian had disabled Xue Minghui. It wasn't difficult to find out what Xue Minghui had done, or perhaps he deliberately wanted Xie Mian to know it was his revenge. Of course, Xue Minghui didn't spare Song Ruoro either. He found people to humiliate her when she was alone, almost causing her to have a miscarriage. But Xue Minghui didn't expect Xie Mian to go so crazy and disable him in public. The spectacle of dogs biting each other was a delight to watch. Because of this, Xie Mian's father became cautious and checked all the project documents handled by Xie Mian. Sure enough, he found obvious loopholes in several important contracts. When signing those contracts, Xie Mian hadn't been present in person because he was fooling around with Song Ruoro. Moreover, Xie Mian had secretly contacted many contacts to join his newly established company. Xie Mian's father was furious. He gave Xie Mian a choice, but relying on his ability to start a business independently, Xie Mian refused to admit his mistakes. He even moved out of the Xie family with Song Ruoro. He was certain that his father would bow his head. After all, he had been the heir of the Xie family for more than 20 years. Xie Mian had never taken Xie Shishu seriously, but this time, his father was completely disappointed in Xie Mian. It was at this moment that he remembered he had another son, and that son was more talented than Xie Mian. He could understand things quickly, and he was even more obedient than Xie Mian. It was just that he had been suppressed by his eldest son in the past few years and hadn't been able to rise to the top. In addition, after the old master of the Xie family woke up, he also intended to let Xie Shishu take over, so when Xie Mian wasn't aware, the Xie family had already undergone a change. At that time, Xie Mian was still indulging in various intimate games with Song Ruoro. While waiting for his father to bow his head, the Xie family had announced the new heir. I originally thought that according to Xie Mian's character, he would make a scene, but he didn't. Instead, he suddenly became diligent in his work and even hired several newly graduated and unknown college students. Everyone was laughing at Xie Mian for giving up on himself. But when I saw those people, I was stunned. They were all old acquaintances of the team Xie Mian had newly established after annexing the Shen family in the previous life. 22. As expected, Xie Mian had also been reborn. He originally wanted to rely on his memories of the previous life to turn the tide, but he didn't expect that I had preempted him in those promising projects and investments. 1 or 2 cases could be considered coincidences, but after so many times, even Xie Mian couldn't convince himself. Shen Luo, you've been reborn too, right? Xie Mian came to question me, his eyes bloodshot. I just looked at him quietly for a while and suddenly smiled. So you're back too, that's great. I said the last 2 words very softly, but Xie Mian could hear them. He misunderstood that I still had feelings for him and that everything I had done was just to make him bow his head to me. So after a moment of hesitation, Xie Mian softened his attitude. We did have some misunderstandings in the previous life, and I just wanted to scare you at that time. I didn't really want to hurt you. Fortunately, nothing has happened yet, and there's still time, Xie Mian said, then changed to an affectionate tone. Actually, Luo Luo, I still love you. Song Ruoro was just a passing fancy to me. You're the one who can truly become the mistress of the Xie family, as long as you help me through this difficult time. I promise I won't hold your previous actions against you. I was amused by Xie Mian's brazen words. Xie Mian, I looked at him sideways, my eyes full of mockery. You don't think I said that because I like a piece of trash like you, do you? Xie Mian's face changed. He tried to rush towards me, but was held back by the bodyguards beside me. What I meant was, now that you're back, I can take my revenge on you with more peace of mind. I walked up to Xie Mian and smiled, dropping another bombshell. By the way, Xie Mian, do you know why Song Ruoro has been clinging to you? What? Because you're just a tool for her to complete her mission. I said each word slowly, watching Xie Mian's face turn pale instantly. 23. Xie Mian wasn't without suspicion, but he stubbornly refused to admit it in front of me. So I took out the records of Song Ruoro's early appointment for an abortion at the hospital. Then I asked him, guess, are there any more problems in your company? Xie Mian shivered when he met my eyes. You. Before he could finish, he was interrupted by a hurried ringtone. As Xie Mian answered the phone, his face grew uglier and uglier. I didn't need to guess what the other person was saying. It was nothing more than financial fraud, and his confidants had embezzled public funds and run away. When Xie Mian was reborn, he faced a pile of troubles and didn't even think to investigate the people in his company. Shen Luo, you bitch. He slammed his phone down and tried to break free from the bodyguards to attack me, but I kicked him several times. Xie Mian, you'd better stay alive. I looked down at him and smiled. It's not over yet. 24. Xie Mian gradually started leaving early and coming back late. To pay off his debts, he and Song Ruoro moved from a high-end apartment to a rental house. This was a huge blow to Song Ruoro, who was used to a luxurious life. Especially since Xie Mian's love value for her no longer increased, Song Ruoro began to do everything she could to please Xie Mian. But although Xie Mian vented his emotions, the love value didn't budge at all. At this time, Shui Minghui found Song Ruoro again and said that as long as she aborted the child and returned to him, he could forget about everything that had happened before. Song Ruoro wavered, especially after Xie Mian scolded her the previous day for spending hundreds of thousands on a necklace, but by then, Song Ruoro's belly was already quite big, so she ruthlessly devised a plan to cause a miscarriage. But she didn't expect that everything would be photographed by the private detective I hired and sent to Xie Mian. You bitch. Song Ruoro, who had been crying pitifully in the hospital, originally wanted to win Xie Mian's sympathy, but instead, she was met with his punches and kicks. He grabbed her hair fiercely and smiled menacingly. You want to go back? I'll make sure you can never go back. You'll stay here with me forever. Upon hearing these words, Song Ruoro stopped crying instantly and looked at Xie Mian in disbelief. It was then that I heard that cold mechanical voice ring out. Mission failed. In the previous life, Xie Mian's love value for Song Ruoro had always been just a little short. Song Ruoro thought it was all because of me, so she planned a death that would make Xie Mian fall in love with her completely and also allow her to take revenge on me. 25. In the end, Xie Mian still bowed his head. He wanted to go back and beg his father for forgiveness, asking the Xie family to help him pay off his debts. But he was stopped by Xie Shishu. Xie Mian's father was originally a bit soft-hearted, until Xie Shishu showed him some evidence. Evidence of the tricks Xie Mian had played on him to prevent other illegitimate children from competing for the family business. I had learned about these things by chance in the previous life, so I had prepared the evidence early in this life. Xiamian's father was shocked and angry, and he immediately had Xiamian driven out. This also let Xue Minghui know that the Xia family had truly given up on Xiamian. He began to take unbridled revenge on Xiamian. The next time I saw Xiamian was in the company's underground parking lot. With a knife in his hand, he rushed towards me, his eyes blood red. Bitch, die. But he was stopped. It was Xie Shishu, who I hadn't seen for a long time due to his busy schedule. It was the first time I saw such a sinister side of Xie Shishu. He punched Xiamian again and again, as if he wanted to beat him to death. If I hadn't stopped him, Xiamian would most likely have been killed by him. Ha ha ha, Xie Shishu. I knew it was you, a bitch and a psycho, a perfect match. Xiamian spat out the teeth that had been knocked out, pointed at us with his swollen eyes, and laughed. When Xie Shishu heard the word psycho, his body stiffened. He turned his back to me and didn't dare to turn around. In fact, Xie Shishu was very different from the person he was a few months ago, but some of his inferiority complex was still ingrained, especially in front of me. I let out a sigh, patted Xie Shishu on the shoulder, and called the police. Until the police arrived, Xie Shishu didn't say a word. He just silently stood in front of me, in a protective stance. During the interrogation, I learned that Song Ruoro was dead. She had been stabbed to death by Xiamian. After Xue Minghui disabled Xiamian's leg and his manhood, Xiamian took out all his anger on Song Ruoro. Later, when he had no money to pay off his debts, he forced Song Ruoro into prostitution. When Song Ruoro couldn't take it anymore and tried to escape, she was caught by the drunk Xiamian, tortured almost to death, and then stabbed to death. After killing someone, Xiamian went completely crazy. He thought that since he had already killed someone, it didn't matter if he killed one more, so he lay in wait for several days, waiting for a chance to attack me when I was alone, but he didn't expect to run into Xie Shishu. But I knew this wasn't a coincidence. Before leaving, I met Xiamian one last time. As soon as Xiamian saw me, he struggled wildly, cursing at me foully. He only quieted down after being kicked a few times by the police. Don't be so excited, I smiled at him softly. Don't worry, your good brother will come to keep you company soon. The Xue family's business was already on the decline, and the disabled Xue Minghui was in low spirits, his behavior becoming increasingly unpredictable. He had many lives on his hands. After saying this, I turned and left without waiting for Xiamian's reaction. I had already instructed people to take good care of Xiamian in prison. The things he did in the last life would now be repeated on him bit by bit. The same applied to Xue Minghui. After leaving the police station, I let out a long sigh. Then I turned to Xie Shishu, who had been silent all this time, and asked, "How long have you been following me?" Xie Shishu stiffened. He suddenly lowered his head, looking helpless as if he had done something wrong. "I'm not blaming you," I sighed. Knowing his personality, I softened my voice. "Come to think of it, I should thank you for protecting me." But Xie Shishu still didn't say a word. Then I realized something was wrong. I forced Xie Shishu to raise his head. That's when I noticed he had gritted his teeth tightly, his eyes red. I was taken aback. Xie Shishu, surely he wasn't that scared. Xie Shishu bit his teeth hard, trying not to let the tears fall. But there were too many tears in his eyes. With a slight blink, a big tear rolled down. "Speak." I was getting anxious, and my tone became harsher. Finally, Xie Shishu spoke with great difficulty, his voice choking with sobs. I am not a psycho. I didn't expect that to be the reason." Xie Shishu, he was crying so pitifully that it stirred up the little kindness I had, so I cupped his face in my hands. "Look at me." Xie Shishu opened his eyes wide, trying his best to focus on me. "You're not a psycho. You're a hero." I smiled at him. "Look, you saved me once when we were kids, and now you've saved me again." Xie Shishu, you're clearly a hero, and you're so smart. My mom has praised you many times and even said she wished you were her child. I rarely had the patience to compliment people, but this time, in an attempt to soothe Xie Shishu, I racked my brain and said a lot of things, even when I felt I was just rambling. Xie Shishu suddenly smiled. His eyes sparkled brightly, but the light faded quickly. He opened his mouth, hesitant. Finally, he mustered up the courage to speak. "I've been having this recurring dream. I dreamt that you were horribly tortured by Xiamian. He even found people to humiliate you. I wanted to save you, but every time, I was just a little too late." Xie Shishu's voice grew softer and softer. Seeing my stunned expression, he quickly explained, "I'm really not crazy. I went to see a doctor, really. He even tried to take out the medical certificate to show me, but I stopped him. Xiaxishu. I sighed, for I didn't know how many times that night. Are you stupid? I remembered how he had hesitated when I asked him why he was working so hard. He was afraid something would happen to me, so he wanted to grow stronger as soon as possible, but he was also afraid that if he told me, I would think he was crazy. Xiaxishu pursed his lips and looked downcast again, like a big, sad dog. Yet he was so imposing when giving media interviews. I held back my laughter. Congratulations, I heard you now hold 40% of the Xia family's shares. I couldn't help but marvel at how incredibly fast Xiaxishu had grown, but Xiaxishu quickly glanced up at me and then lowered his head again. He said very softly, "It's 0.27. What?" I thought I had misheard, so Xiaxishu patiently repeated, "I transferred them all to your name." This time, it was my turn to be silent. The old man still holds 30%. And he won't give them to me yet, Xiaxishu said, sounding a bit apologetic. It took a while before I found my voice. It was hoarse yet earnest. "I never asked you to give me the Xia family business, Xiaxishu. When I first approached you, it was just to get revenge on Xia Mian. I do want to take over the Xia family, but you didn't have to go this far." Although later I hoped Xiaxishu could have the ability to protect himself, since he had saved me, I intended to give him the entire Xia family as a token of gratitude. No one would turn down money and status, at least, that's what I always thought, but Xiaxishu seemed to be an exception. "I know," he smiled at me shyly. Aunt Shin said, "You can trust a man when pigs can fly." My mom did say that all the time. She also often said that men were just for fun, and if one didn't work out, I should move on to the next, but I'm sure she never said that in front of Xiaxishu, otherwise, he'd be so heartbroken. I nodded and heard him continue. "I think Aunt Shin is right. I also think I'm not very reliable. Aunt Shin also said that you love money. If I want to make you happy, I should just give you money." Xiaxishu paused and then asked me cautiously, "Did I do the right thing?" After a long silence, I nodded and said, "At least it's better than that money tree." God knew how much effort I had put into taking care of that money tree. Xiaxishu blushed deeply. "Why are you so good to me?" I looked up at Xiaxishu and asked. Xiaxishu blurted out without thinking, "Because only you would bring me food, drive away those who bullied me, and play with me." Those were all things that happened before the kidnapping. I interrupted him, "But I don't remember any of that." Xiaxishu frowned in confusion. "But even after you lost your memory, you still warned those people not to bully me. You also told me that I had to become strong to avoid being bullied." He paused, his eyes shining brightly. "Everything you said was right." I vaguely remembered saying those things, but back then, it was just out of momentary pity, yet Xiaxishu had remembered them all, both in this life and the last. My eyes suddenly felt a bit sore. I took a deep breath and smiled. "Xiaxishu, it's hard for me to trust others. And it's even harder for me to rely on a man. For me, love is just an illusion. Only money and power are real and tangible in my hands. I will climb to a high position on my own in the future. What I want is far more than what's in front of me now, so I will demand absolute loyalty, but I can't offer the same in return because I'm a very selfish person." I stared at Xiaxishu intently, not missing the slightest change in his expression. "So, do you understand what I mean?" But Xiaxishu was really clueless. He didn't even know how to confess his feelings. He just thought for a moment, then he asked me cautiously, "Can I still go to your house often to take care of that money tree?" "Sure, the kind where only I can take care of it," he emphasized. I rolled my eyes in exasperation. "Fine, then that's good." Xiaxishu suddenly smiled contentedly. "It doesn't matter, I don't need much." He had given me the power to decide everything. From the moment he transferred the shares to my name. Idiot, Xiaxishu tried to defend himself, but I suddenly kissed him. His eyes widened in surprise, and his whole body went stiff. Then he turned as red as a tomato. I pulled away after a brief kiss. "Xiaxishu." He lowered his head and was silent for a while. Just when I thought he was too shy, Xiaxishu suddenly looked up at me with bright eyes and gently tugged at the corner of my clothes. "Can I have another kiss?" "Me, close your eyes." He had definitely been influenced by my mom. 28. Xia Mian didn't have an easy time in prison. He was good looking, and there were many people with special preferences in prison. Before long, Xia Mian was tortured so badly that he was almost paralyzed and had to be sent to the hospital. He tried to escape but was caught. He also tried to feign madness to avoid going back, but nothing worked. Not long after, the Shui family went bankrupt. Shui Minghui was also imprisoned. I specifically arranged for him to be in the same place as Xianmian. I heard that when the two enemies first saw each other, they were filled with hatred, but soon they became companions in misfortune. I knew Xie Shishu had a hand in this, but he was always so well behaved in front of me that even my mom couldn't help but tell me not to bully him too much. After all, even before we got married, all his wealth was already in my hands. Do I bully you? I grabbed Xie Shishu's tie and forced him to lower his head. There was a light purple wisteria painted on his beautiful eyebrows and eyes, which I had drawn on a whim last night. Later, I found out that the first time I drew on him, he cherished it so much that he didn't dare to touch it. He was even sad for a while when the paint faded. Xie Shishu obediently bent down following my pull and rubbed against me. No, Mom, look. I don't bully him. I immediately turned to protest to my mom. Get out of here. My mom rolled her eyes and waved us away in disgust. If you want to show your affection, do it outside. Don't make me, an old woman, have to hit my own daughter. So I happily pulled Xie Shishu outside. When we reached the swing under the wisteria trellis, I suddenly remembered that the first time I brought Xie Shishu home, I had let him sit on the swing and pushed him. At that time, I thought Xie Shishu was a girl. A very beautiful girl. I had always wanted a younger sister. Xie Shishu, I pointed at the swing, sit on it. Xie Shishu didn't ask why. He only grabbed the ropes in a panic when I playfully pushed him. He instinctively turned his head to look at me but froze when he felt a kiss land on his cheek. He subconsciously looked towards the house, worried that my mom might see. I held back my laughter. Xie Shishu, let's cooperate one more time. Xie Shishu's eyelashes trembled, and he said slowly, but I don't have any money left. It seemed that he was always broke in front of me. When we were kids, I tricked away all his money. Now, he had voluntarily given all his money to me. It doesn't matter. She paused for a moment, then took out a box of medicine from her pocket and carefully handed it to Xianmian, saying, Brother, your stomach is not good. I prepared some medicine for you in advance. I took out a box of medicine from my pocket and handed it to him carefully. Xie Shishu was stunned for a long time this time. Of course, if you don't, okay, he interrupted me eagerly but didn't dare to look at me. He repeated okay several times in a low voice. I couldn't help but laugh. Don't cry. So Xie Shishu managed to hold back the urge to raise his hand and stubbornly said, I'm not crying. I sighed, but now I suddenly want to see you cry. Xie Shishu turned his head in surprise, his eyes still red. I kissed him, then I said, if my mom sees this, she'll say I'm bullying you again. As soon as I finished speaking, my mom's angry shout came, Shenluo, don't think I can't hear you.